Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are doing something a little different today. Usually we're looking outward at history or, tech or psychology. But today we are turning the lens inward.
Yeah, right back at it.
We are looking right at you, the listener, specifically the creative ones. And we are going to poke at a very specific, very tender root.
It is a sensitive one today. We're talking about that feeling, the imposter syndrome that comes from the gap between what you do and what you think you should do.
Exactly. We're tackling the question that I think, it haunts the nightmares of every aspiring author, screenwriter, or just, the casual scribbler.
Oh, yeah.
It's that age-old tension. Can you legitimately consider yourself a writer if you are not an active reader?
It's the ultimate gatekeeping question, isn't it? You see it all over Twitter. You hear it in writing workshops. If you aren't reading 50 books a year, just put down the pen.
And it triggers so much guilt. I'll be honest, there are months where life just gets completely crazy, and that stack of books on my nightstand it turns into a coaster for my water glass.
Oh, I know that feeling.
And then I sit down to write,
and
I have this little voice in my head saying, who are you kidding? You're a fraud. You aren't doing the homework.
That phrase, doing the homework, that is so key, because that is how we're conditioned to think about it, right? If you don't do the reading, you fail the class.
Right.
And looking at the stack of research we have for today, the answer to can you write without reading is not a simple yes or no. It's messy.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack some really heavy advice from the absolute titans of literature. And I mean the scary ones, the ones who do not mince words.
Oh, yeah, no punches pulled.
Then we're going to look at the actual mechanics of what reading does to your brain, the under-the-hood stuff. And then, and this is the part I'm really excited about because I think it's going to make a lot of people feel better, we are going to bust 6 massive myths about reading that I think hold so many people back.
And the goal here really isn't to make anyone feel guilty. If you're listening to this and you haven't finished a book in 6 months, please don't turn it off. We are not here to scold you.
Right. We are not your high schooling.
We want to look at the nuance because the sources specifically present this binary that is actually a spectrum. Is the answer a hard yes or a hard no? Well, spoiler alert, it's both. And it really depends on what your goals are.
Okay, so let's start with the no. Let's start with the tough love approach first. Because if you look at the biographies of the greats, they're pretty aggressive on this point. They treat reading almost like a religious requirement.
They absolutely do. And we have to start with William Faulkner. You can't even begin to talk about the subject without his famous instruction.
Okay, lay it on us. What did he say?
So Faulkner didn't say read only the classics. He didn't say study the canon exclusively or only read books that win the Pulitzer. He said read everything. Trash, classics, good and bad.
Trash. I love that he included trash. But wait, why? Usually when you want to get good at something, you study the best, right? If I want to be a chef, I don't go eat out of a dumpster. So why would Faulkner tell us to read bad books?
It is a really counterintuitive point, isn't it? But think about his metaphor. He compares a writer to a carpenter, an apprentice.
Okay.
Now, if you walk into a masterfully built cathedral, everything is perfect. The joints are hidden. The structure is absolutely seamless. You just look at it and go, wow, that's beautiful. But you have no idea how it stands up. The trick is invisible.
Because the illusion is too good. You can't see the work.
But what if you walk into a lopsided shed in someone's backyard?
Okay, I can picture.
You can see exactly where the carpenter messed up. You can see, oh, he didn't put a support beam there, and that's why the roof is sagged. You can see the nails sticking out, the wood warping. Faulkner's point is that trash, or, bad writing, it exposes the mechanics. You can see the seams.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So when you're reading a bad book, you aren't just hating on it for fun. You're actually dissecting it. You're saying, okay, why am I so bored right now? Oh, because the author spent 3 pages describing a tree.
Precisely. Or why does this dialogue sound so fake? Oh, because nobody on Earth talks like that. You learn what not, which is often a much faster way to learn than trying to figure out what. It's reverse engineering.
Okay, so Faulkner says read the trash to learn the trade. That's one pillar. But then we have what the source calls the community Bible for writers.
Stephen King's On Writing.
Yes.
If you have a friend who writes, I promise you, they have this book on their shelf. It's inescapable.
And King is, well, he's a little less gentle than Faulkner, isn't he? He's not really the everyone gets a participation trophy kind of guy.
He is not. King lays down an ultimatum. He writes, quote, if you want to be a writer, you must do 2 things above all other. Read a lot and write a lot. He basically says there is no way around these 2. No shortcut, no hack.
Doesn't he have that bet he talks about? I remember reading something about a steak dinner.
Yes, this is a classic King anecdote. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, if I had a nickel for every person who ever told me he or she wanted to become a writer but didn't have time to read, I could buy myself a pretty good dinner.
Ouch. That stings a little. It's pretty dismissive.
It does. And it's meant to sting. He's trying to jolt people out of what he sees as a lazy excuse.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. That sounds great coming from Stephen King, a multimillionaire who has been writing full-time since the 70s.
Sure.
But what about the single mom working 2 jobs, or the student buried in textbooks for their degree? Is King telling her she's not allowed to write her novel because she can't fit in a new book every week? It feels a bit, gatekeeper-y.
And that is a completely fair criticism, 100%. And frankly, King is speaking from a position of extreme privilege and singular obsession. Not everyone has that luxury or that life, but if we can strip away the elitism for a moment and just look at the mechanics of his argument, there is a hard truth buried in there.
Which is?
He says, can I be blunt on this subject? If you don't have time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write.
The time or the tools. Okay, let's unpack that, because I think tools is the operative word.
Yeah.
He's not saying you aren't worthy of writing or you're not a good person. He's saying you don't have the equipment.
Exactly. That is the absolute core of the no argument. It is not a moral judgment. It is a logistical. The source material uses a really powerful analogy here. Imagine trying to compose a symphony if you have never listened.
All right, you might be able to make some noise. You can bang on a drum. You can, pluck a string. But are you making music or just sound?
Probably not. Or, to make it even more practical, and this relates to the business of writing, imagine opening a restaurant. You tell everyone you want to be the head chef. You want to run the whole place.
Okay.
But you don't know the first thing about cooking. You've never looked at a menu from another restaurant, and you've certainly never studied the restaurant business itself.
That is a kitchen nightmare waiting to happen. Gordon Ramsay is screaming at you in this scenario.
He absolutely is. And the source describes this specific failure mode as talking without listening.
Talking without listening. Wow, that hits hard.
It's a profound deficit, isn't it? It's this desire to have your own voice heard, to project your ideas out into the world without respecting or even understanding the conversation that has been going on for centuries there.
So it's a kind of arrogance.
It's narcissism in a way. It's basically saying, I have something important to say, but I really don't care what anyone else has said before me.
That is a really humbling way to put it. Okay, so if we accept that reading isn't just a hobby for writers, it's the listening half of the conversation. Let's dig into that toolbox, Kingman, because I think people here read to write, and they think it's just about inspiration, like, oh, I'll read Harry Potter and get inspired to write about wizards.
Right, but that's so surface level. The toolbox is much more mechanical. It's about the nuts and bolts of the craft itself.
So give me an example. What is a specific, tangible tool that you can really only get from reading?
Okay, let's talk about point of view, or POV. Specifically, the difference between first person, I walk down the street, and third person, he walked down the street, and the discipline of how to stay in one lane.
Oh, the dreaded head hopping.
Exactly. If you don't read, you might not intuitively understand the rules, or let's say the convention. A non-reading writer might start a scene in what's called third-person limited. We are inside the hero's head, we're feeling his fear. But then in the very next sentence, the writer will just tell us what the villain across the room is thinking.
Right. John felt a cold dread creep up his spine. Across the room, the killer thought John looked particularly tasty.
Yes. And to a seasoned reader, that is so jarring. It breaks the immersion instantly. It's like watching a movie where the camera just teleports randomly between characters' brains. But a writer who doesn't read, they don't feel that jar. They don't see the problem.
Why not?
They just think, well, I need the audience to know what the killer is thinking, so I'll just say it.
Right.
They don't have that internalized architecture of how a novel is supposed to.
It's like they're trying to build that house we mentioned without a blueprint. And the source also points out something really interesting. A lot of novice writers who don't read tend to write things that feel more like screenplays than novels.
This is a huge giveaway. If you consume mostly movies and TV shows, your brain is wired for visual story, which is fine. But when you sit down to write prose, you describe the visual act. He walked to the door, he opened it, the light.
Which sounds like stage direct.
It's a list of events, but you miss the interiority. The magic of a novel is about what is happening inside the character, the thoughts, the feelings, the memory, the stuff the camera can.
So reading teaches you how to write the invisible.
Precisely. And so much more. Learning how to control pacing, how to structure a chapter for a cliffhanger, how to develop a unique narrative voice, that all comes from seeing it on the page thousands and thousands of times.
There was one specific technical thing the source mentioned that I thought was fascinating. It's so small, but apparently it's a dead giveaway. Dialogue formatting.
Ah, yes. The brown M&Ms of the writing.
Wait, like the Van Halen writer?
Yeah.
The story about their concert contract.
Exactly like that. Van Halen used to have this clause in their contract demanding a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown ones. It wasn't because they hated brown candy, it was a quick.
To see if the promoter had actually read the contract carefully.
Right. If they saw brown M&Ms, they knew they had to double-check the lighting rigs and the sound equipment because the promoter was sloppy.
And dialogue formatting is the test for writing.
It is the ultimate osmosis of grammar. You can try to memorize a rule book, sure, but if you read constantly, you absorb the rules of punctuation and formatting without even trying. You just know that a new speaker needs a new paragraph. You know where the comma goes inside the quotations.
And if you don't do that, if you get it wrong.
The source notes that incorrect dialogue formatting is the single most frequent mistake in self-published novels. And to an editor or an agent, it serves as an immediate warning. It screams, this person does not read books.
Wow.
Because if you read books, you would have seen tens of thousands of lines of dialogue formatted correct. It would just look wrong to do it any other way.
That's wild. It's like showing up to a construction site wearing your helmet backwards. It doesn't mean you can't build, but everyone is going to look at you and go, does this person actually know what they're doing?
That's before we even get to market awareness. Just knowing what is actually out there on the shelves.
Right. This is the whole don't reinvent the wheel argument.
We see this all the time. A writer has a brilliant new idea. They spend 2 years writing a book about, let's say, a teenager in a dystopian society who has to fight other teenagers in a televised death match.
Groundbreaking, never been done.
Exactly. If they don't read, they might genuinely think this is a fresh, original concept. But if they read, they know that shell. Wow, it's pretty crowded. They know the trope, they know the cliches, they know about the Hunger Games and Battle Royale.
So reading protects you from accidental plagiarism.
Yeah.
Or at least from accidental unoriginality.
It does more than that. It gives you the confidence to know exactly where your book fits. You can walk into a bookstore and say, my book belongs here next to this author. You know your comps, your comparable titles. It's like the Hunger Games, but it's set in space. If you don't read, you're flying completely blind in a very, very crowded sky.
Okay, so that is a pretty damning case for the no sign. You need the tools, you need the context, you need the grammar, you need the market knowledge. If we stop the deep dive right here, the answer would be a resounding no, you cannot be a writer without reading.
It would be a very firm no, but we promised nuance.
We did, and we promised validation for the people who are probably feeling terrible right now.
So let's flip the coin. Let's talk about the yes argument. Because the reality is, life is brutally hard. Not everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, despite what all the hustle culture gurus tell you.
Right, let's go back to that single mom we mentioned, or someone who's dealing with a chronic illness or crushing burnout from their job.
This is where we have to be human. The source material is very clear. Writing is a form of self-expression that is open to everyone. It is not just for the scholarly elite who have endless free time. And there are legitimate barriers to entry when reading.
Parenting is a massive, the sheer exhaustion at the end of the day.
It's the cognitive load. You know, reading a dense novel requires active focus. Watching a show on Netflix allows for a bit more passive. For some people, especially those with learning differences like dyslexia or ADHD, reading requires a massive amount of energy.
When the source makes a really valid point about the energy economy.
Energy economy, I love that term.
You too?
You only have so much fuel in the tank each day. If you spend 100% of your creative energy just fighting through a book, you might have 0% left to actually write your own. Sometimes life forces a trade-off.
And if you choose to write instead of read in that moment, that doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you're prioritizing output over input, maybe just for a season.
Precisely. And it doesn't mean you are devoid of story. This is where we get into what the source calls alternative schools of storytelling.
Because books are not the only place stories live.
Far from it. I mean, think about oral storytelling. We all know that one person who can hold a room captive at a party.
Oh yeah, my uncle.
They can tell a story about just going to the grocery store and make it sound like an epic adventure. They understand pacing. They understand suspense. They know how to land a punchline.
And he might not have read a book in 10 years.
Exactly. That person has an intuitive grasp of narrative structure. That is a writing skill, even if it's not written down on a...
And what about the visual stuff? We kind of bashed movies earlier for making books sound like screenplays, but surely there's value there.
There is huge value. The source explicitly validates visual media, movies, TV shows, anime, even video games. These are absolutely valid sources of inspiration. And if you are playing a narrative-heavy video game like The Last of Us or Red Dead Redemption 2...
Oh, amazing story.
Amazing. You are absorbing complex character. You're learning about world building. You are absorbing dialogue rhythms and plot twists.
I've definitely watched a TV show like Succession or something and thought, wow, the way they revealed that secret in the dialogue was brilliant. And then trying to figure out how to do that in tech.
And that is active study. That's reading the screen. The source calls this recombining elements, taking a film aesthetic, say, the dark, moody vibe of a noir film, the lighting, the shadows, and trying to translate that feeling into words. That is fact.
And then there is the biggest source of all, which isn't media at all. It's just living.
The raw material, this is crucial. The source warns against becoming what it calls a library rat.
The library rat. I think I dated one of those in college.
Yeah.
Pale skin. smelled like old paper, didn't really know how to order a pizza.
We've all been there. But the danger is real. If you spend your entire life with your nose in a book, reading about life instead of actually living it, your writing can become sterile. It can become hollow. You become a copy.
You're writing about love based on how Jane Austen wrote about love, not based on how it feels to actually get your heart broken in a rainy park.
Exactly. Going out and interacting with people, having your heart broken, working a terrible job, getting fired, traveling, getting lost, that is the best search a writer develops self-awareness, insight into how people act, not how they speak in 19th century novels.
So you can have all the technical tools from reading, that perfectly built house from Faulkner's analogy. But if you don't have the life experience, the house is empty. There's no furniture.
Precise. Authenticity comes from the raw material of life. Fiction cannot teach you, only experience.
Okay, so we have this tension. You need the technical tools from books to build the structure, but you need the soul from lived experience to fill. But even if a writer accepts that balance, there are still these mental blocks that stop them from picking up a book in the first place.
The psychological barrier.
Right. And the source identifies what calls the sixth myth. These are the lies we tell ourselves to get out of the work. Or, the misconceptions that make reading feel like a chore instead of a joy.
And these are so pervasive, I guarantee almost everyone listening holds at least one of true.
Let's hit myth number 1. And this is a big one for the Goodreads crowd, the book talk crowd. I have to read 100 books a year to be a real reader.
Ah, yes. The magic threshold. The gamification of reading. It's a competition.
It's so stressful. I see people posting their year in books infographic, and it's like 150 titles. And I'm sitting there with my 12 feeling like a complete failure.
The source really pushes back hard on this. It argues for quality over quantity. And there's a great quote here from the philosopher Mortimer J. Adler. He said, "It's not how many books you get, but how many can get."
How many get through to you? That changes the metric entirely, doesn't it?
It does. A writer will learn significantly more from reading 5 books, deliberately stopping to analyze a sentence, rereading a chapter to see how it was constructed, thinking about the structure, than they will from speed reading 100 books just to hit a number on.
It's the difference between a deep read and a skim. One is for learning, one is for counting.
Exactly. And frankly, chasing page counts is dangerous for a writer. If your sole obsession is hitting 100 books, what are you going to do? You are going to gravitate towards short, easy novella, graphic novels.
You might skip Dune or Middlemarch or Infinite Jest because a 1,000-page book will ruin your stats for the year.
I am totally guilty of this. I've literally thought, I can't start War and Peace. It'll take me 3 months. I need to read 10 novellas to catch up to my goal.
And think of what you're missing. You are actively avoiding the masterpieces because they aren't efficient. You're reframing success to be about impressing other people with a number rather than improving your own.
Which leads perfectly into myth number. I need to learn. I feel like every few years there is a new app or a new online course promising how to read a book in 20 minutes.
It's a cultural obsession. We want to hack everything, optimize everything. But for a writer, this is actively harmful. The source uses a great analogy. Reading is a muscle. Speed comes naturally with practice and improved skill.
But the app says I can triple my...
Think about the weightlifting analogy again. If you're at the gym and you just jerk the barbell up and down as fast as humanly possible to say you did 50 reps, are you building muscle?
No, you're just tearing your rotator cuff.
Exactly. You're focusing on the metric, not the form. And there's a brilliant insight here from the writer Francine Prose, who, by the way, has the most perfect surname for a writer in history.
Prose. You literally can't make that up.
She points out that reading slower creates appreciation. When you speed read, you are just skimming for information. You are getting the what happened next, who died, what was the plot twist. But a writer needs the how.
The how.
Language is your medium. It's like a painter looking at a Van Gogh. They don't just glance from across the room and say, oh, it's a starry night. They get up close. They look at the texture, the individual brushstrokes. They look at how the paint is layered. They ask, how did he get that specific shade of yellow to pop so intensely against that blue?
So if you speed read, you're missing the brushstrokes. You're just seeing the JPEG of the...
Exactly. You miss the rhythm of the sentence, the specific word choice, the way a paragraph is constructed. You have to slow down to see how the language is being used. If you race through it, you are consuming content, but you are not studying craft.
Okay, myth number... This one hits close to home for anyone who tried to read important literature in high school. Reading is always easy.
The Instagram version of reading, right? A steaming cup of tea, a cozy blanket, a purring cat, and a book that you just fall into immediately and never want to leave.
Right, and then you pick up a classic or something experimental, and it's just a slog. It's work. And you feel stupid. You feel like, I don't get it. Everyone says this is a masterpiece. Why am I so bored? Why is this sentence half a page long?
The source validates this struggle. It admits that, yes, some Great books feel pretentious. Some feel boring. Some are incredibly difficult. And it is very, very alienating when you don't get a popular or critically acclaimed book.
So what's the fix? Do we just admit we're dumb and go back to scrolling TikTok?
No, not at all.
Oh.
We just have to recognize the learning curve. The source mentions what it calls the first 20% rule.
What's that?
It takes time to climb the hill of a new style or a new world. The first 20% of a challenging book is often pure setup. You're learning the names, the geography, the author's unique voice. It's work. Your brain is building the simulation.
So the advice is to power through that first 20%. Maybe you read the first few chapters in one sitting just to get over the hump.
That's good advice. Instead of reading 2 pages a night and forgetting what happened, just blitz the beginning to get your bearings.
Exactly. And then for your overall reading life, use the sandwich.
I'm always up for a sandwich.
It's a strategy for your reading diet. Don't try to read 3 dense philosophical Russian novels in a row. You will absolutely burn out. You sandwich the hard stuff,
So read a class.
then read a fun, fast-paced thriller, then maybe a graphic, then go back to the heavy stuff. Keep the hobby enjoyable. It's not up to
Balance. I like it. Okay, myth number 4. This is a fear I hear from new writers. Reading will influence my writing too much. I'll accidentally plagiarize something.
the fear of the ghost of Charles Dickens taking over your hand and making you write about orphans and soot-covered in.
Exactly. Or if I read too much Hemingway, I'll just sound like a bad, cheap copy of Hemingway. Or worse, if I read this new sci-fi book, I'll accidentally steal their idea.
Here is the reality check the source provides. You are not that good a mimic.
That's weirdly reassuring,
Yeah.
I think.
It is. No writer can perfectly replicate another. Even if you try your hardest, your own personal signature will always come through. You have your own vocabulary, your own worldview, your own unique life experiences. They act like a filter. Everything you read goes through that personal filter.
And isn't all art kind of theft anyway, in a sense?
In a way, yeah. All stories spring from previous stories. That is the nature of art. It's a great conversation. And if you don't read books because you are afraid of their influence, guess what? Your influences will just come from the movies and TV shows you watch instead. You cannot create in a vacuum.
So the advice is just to embrace.
Embrace it. Recycle.
No.
Build upon older ideas. That is the essence of creativity. Don't be afraid of sounding like your heroes at first. Eventually, you will blend enough of your heroes together that you start sounding like yourself.
Moving on to myth number 5. I should finish every book I start. The old sunk cost fallacy.
This is such a toxic mindset. I bought it with my own money. I read 50 pages. I absolutely hate it, but I have to finish. Otherwise, I'm a quitter.
I feel so attacked right now. That is me.
Life is too short for bad book. The source is very firm on this. It is okay to be picky. There's a wonderful concept here called the book buffet from a writer named Hannah Greendale.
A buffet. Okay, I like this.
Think of a library or a bookstore as a giant buffet table. You don't have to eat everything on the table. That would make you physically sick. You sample, read the first page, the first chapter. Does it tickle your taste buds? If yes, keep eating. If no, put it back and try something else. No guilt.
I love that. That's permission to quit. Because I think we feel like we're failing the author if we stop on page 50.
You aren't. Not every book is a 5-star read for every person. And here's a pro tip from the source. Even a bad book can teach you something. But you don't need to finish it to learn the lesson. If you read 50 pages and realize the dialogue is terrible, congratulations. You just learned what terrible dialogue looks like. You can put the book down. Lesson learned.
Reading should be a source of comfort, not guilt. I need to tattoo that on my forehead.
It really, really should.
Okay, final myth. Myth number 6, the big one.
Yeah.
The one we started this whole deep dive with. I don't have time to read.
The universal excuse.
But it feels so real. We're busy. Between work, family, the gym, trying to have a social life. I mean, where is the time?
We are busy, no question. But the source calls for a priorities check. And this is where we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. We say we don't have time. But let's look at the screen time report on your phone.
Please do not look at my screen time report. It is deeply embarrassing.
But that's the point, isn't it? We have time to scroll Instagram for an hour. We have time to watch 3 episodes of a show on Netflix. We have time for video games. We have time for gardening.
Okay, but gardening feels wholesome. You can't attack gardening.
It is. It's wonderful. But it's a choice. The gardening and the video games are choices that use up reading time. It's not a lack of time. It's a lack of priority.
So how do we fix it? Because I'm not going to quit my job to read novels all day.
The strategy here is the 30-minute habit. You don't need these huge 4-hour blocks of uninterrupted silence. Those don't exist for. You have to find the pocket.
The pockets.
The little moment. Read while you're eating lunch instead of scroll. Read for 15 minutes before. It's so much better for your sleep than a blue light. Read while waiting in line at the... If you reclaim those dead moments throughout your day, you'd be amazed at how many pages you can...
Okay, I can hear the purists screaming through their headphones right now.
Yeah.
They're saying, if your eyes aren't moving across a page, it's not reading. Do audiobooks actually count? Because that is as the easiest way to multitask.
This is the audiobook defense, and the source is very, very clear on this. Audiobooks absolutely do count as reading, 100%. Your brain is processing narrative structure, pacing, vocabulary, character development, and story.
So the purists are wrong.
Scientifically, yes. When it comes to story comprehension, listening and reading activate very similar parts of the brain. However, and this is a big however, there is a specific caveat for writers.
I knew there was a catch.
You cannot learn punctuation with your ears. You cannot see how the dialogue is formatted. You cannot see paragraph breaks or chapter structure on the page. So audiobooks give you the macro tools, story, character, pacing, but they don't give you the micro tools, the grammar, the formatting, the spelling.
So mix it up. Don't be an absolutist.
Exactly. Use audiobooks for the found time when you're doing chores, commuting, walking the dog. That keeps your story intake high. But maybe keep a physical book or an ebook on the nightstand for that deeper craft analysis, even if it's just for 10 minutes a day.
I think that's a really fair and achievable balance. Okay, so we've busted the myths. We've looked at the arguments for and against. But let's say our listener is sitting there thinking, okay, I get it. I want to read more, but I still can't commit to a 400-page novel right now. My brain is just fried. What are the actionable alternatives? What can they do today that counts as input?
The source provides some fantastic resources for productive reading beyond novels, because you're right, novels are a big commitment.
Let's list them. Where should they start?
First, Short Story Mag. This is an absolute goldmine for writers that most people completely ignore.
Like what? What are some names?
There are classics like Granta, or online genre magazines like Beneath Ceaseless Skies for fantasy, or Clark's World for sci-fi. Many of them are...
And why are these better for the busy or burnt-out writer?
Because they are complete stories. You get the beginning, the middle, and the end in a single sitting. Maybe it takes 20 minutes. You can analyze the entire narrative structure without that weeks-long commitment. If you want to learn how to write a powerful ending, read 10 short stories. You'll see 10 different endings in a single afternoon.
That's brilliant. It's so efficient. What about podcasts? I mean, not just like this one, but actual literary podcasts.
Yeah. The New Yorker Fiction Podcast is a great example mentors. A guest author reads a classic short story from the magazine's archive, and then they discuss it with the editor. It's like a mini book club with the smartest people in the room. You get the reading and the analysis.
I love that show. It's like getting a free MFA class while you fold your lawn.
It really is. Or... for genre fans, there's the whole Escape Artists family of podcasts. Escape Pod for sci-fi, Podcastle for fantasy, Pseudopod for horror. They produce high-quality fiction, read by professional voice actors, sent right to your ears for free.
And for the nonfiction lovers, because sometimes you just want ideas, not necessarily stories.
Essays are fantastic for this. A blog like The Brain Pickings, which is now called The Marginalian, is a great resource. It dissects art, literature, and philosophy. It sparks ideas. It's all about feeding your brain with high-quality input, even if it's in short form.
And finally, there's the issue of access, because books can be expensive, and not everyone has a budget for 50 hardcovers a year.
Never forget Project Gutenberg. Over 60,000 free ebooks, all the classics, Alice in Wonderland, Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, Frankenstein. They are free. They are in the public domain. You can download them to your phone or e-reader right now.
And, of course, the most underrated resource on the planet, libraries.
Libraries are the writer's best friend. Or used bookstores. Or, honestly, just ask a bookworm friend.
Yeah. That is so true. If you ask a passionate reader for a recommendation, they will usually just shove the book into your hands and say, please take this. I need someone to talk to about it.
They will beg you to take it off their hands. It's a public service.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've unpacked the guilt, the tools, the myths, and the resource. If we had to boil this entire conversation down to a single core philosophy for our listener, that person who started this episode feeling like a fraud, what would it be?
I think it's that there are no hard and fast rules. The titans, like Faulkner and King, might say you must do this or that, but at the end of the day, the definition of success is success is finding the books or the stories in whatever form that spark your desire to write. That's the entire goal.
Input that creates output.
And frankly, you are enough.
Yes,
Yeah.
you are enough. If you are writing, you are a writer, period. Reading will make you a better writer, undoubtedly. It will make the process easier. It will fill your toolbox. But the ultimate directive is, whatever you do, keep writing. Don't let the guilt of not reading stop you from actually creating. Keep writing. I love that. And here's a final provocative thought to leave you with, something to mull over as you go about your day. We've all heard that phrase, you are what you eat.
Right.
Well, if that's true for our bodies, it is absolutely true for our creativity. So consider what your current media diet is turning your writing into. If you look at your menu for the week and be honest with yourself, is it 90% TikToks, 5% angry news feeds, and 5% reality TV?
That's a junk food diet for the mind.
It is. So ask yourself, are you satisfied with what that menu is building? If you want to write a symphony, you might need to stop listening to noise.
That is a question worth answering.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.